Hey, this is Gary with Jolly Dolly, and I'm going to show you how to change out the axle on a chain drive Jolly Dolly. Tools you need to complete this job are a few hammers. You'll need a 1/8 inch and a 5/32 inch Allen wrench or an Allen socket with an extension and a ratchet, a drill driver with a 5/16 nut driver, some kind of penetrant spray. This is WD-40 penetrating spray. You're going to need either an impact or a ratchet with 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 13/16 sockets. You'll need a flat screwdriver, needle nose pliers, a 3/4 wrench. You'll need something to cut the axle with. I have here a grinder with a cutting wheel and also a grinding wheel for smoothing it out. Some extra screws would be a good idea. These are number 12, either 3/4 or 1 inch long. And then you'll need some kind of protection for using the grinder. This is a welding mask set to grind mode, but you can use a face shield or some kind of eye protection. You'll also need a grease gun to grease the bearings. The replacement axle should be a Peerless 141D differential. You'll also need replacement FL205 pillow block bearings. Do not try to reuse the existing bearings. Trust me on this. Lay the dolly down on its belly or on a table like this. Remove the screws on the rear cover plate using a drill driver and a 5/16 nut driver. When you remove the cover plate, check for and disconnect any attached wires. Rotate the tires by hand and locate the master link on the chain. Position it to the top of the large sprocket where it will be easy to access later. Remove the lug nuts using a 13/16 socket with an impact, ratchet, or lug wrench. Remove the wheels and tires. Remove any debris from around the hubs, then spray some penetrating spray into the keyhole and around the hubs and the retaining collar. Loosen the set screw on the retaining collar using a 5/32 Allen wrench or Allen socket. Use a hammer to knock the hub and the collar off. Be sure to retrieve the square key in the process. Repeat the process for the other side. In some cases, the hubs will be seized to the axle and they'll require extra effort to remove. Use a flathead screwdriver to remove the retaining clip on the chain master link. Remove the link and then remove the chain. Remove the 4 bolts holding the pillow block bearings in place. The bolts are usually 3/4 inch and I recommend using an impact punch for this, but you can also use a ratchet. These are lock nuts so they'll resist being loosened all the way until the nut comes off. If the bearings are stuck in place, use a pry bar or hammer them to loosen them up. Remove the axle. We're going to reuse the large sprocket on the axle, so we'll need to remove the 2 pillow block bearings on that side of the axle so we can remove the sprocket. There are 2 set screws on each bearing that need to be loosened with a 1/8 inch Allen wrench. It's pretty common for the bearings to be seized to the axle. Pre-spray them with penetrating spray, but most of the time you'll need to aggressively knock these off with a hammer. This is the main reason we don't try to reuse these bearings. The other reason is that if the axle has failed, then the bearings are probably not much further behind. Now we're going to remove the lock nuts that hold on the sprocket with a 1/2 inch socket. Remove the sprocket. On our new axle, we will remove the same lock nuts, install the sprocket, and then tighten the lock nuts back in place. Now we're going to slide our new pillow block bearings onto each side of the axle. Make sure the set screws are pre-loosened with a 1/8 Allen wrench. There's 2 set screws per bearing. Slide the bearings on as shown to make a bearing sandwich on each side of the axle. Now we're going to install the axle onto the dolly, making sure that the silver gearbox is on the motor side of the sprocket, not the battery side. Put the mounting bolts through the holes. Make sure that all the grease fittings are facing up so you can grease the bearings later. Put the lock nut on the inside of the dolly. On this dolly, we're using new bolts because the old bolts were in bad shape. Tighten the bolts, but do not torque them all the way down yet. Line the two sprockets up by tapping on the ends of the axle with a hammer until they line up. Now you can finish tightening the bolts. Since these are lock nuts, you don't have to tighten them too much. They should be tight, but you should still be able to turn them with a wrench and some effort. Route the chain under the sprockets and wrap the chain around the sprockets to meet at the top of the large sprocket. You may need to turn the sprocket to pull some slack out of the chain. Install the master link starting with the pin link, then the side plate, and last but not least, the retaining clip. Lock the retaining clip in place with needle nose pliers. Now we need to grease the bearings. Use a grease gun to pump grease into the bearing while someone rotates the axle slowly. Continue pumping until grease oozes out of the bearing. Then wipe up the excess. Repeat this for all 4 bearings. Now I'm going to tighten one of the set screws on one of the bearings just to make sure the sprockets stay aligned during the rest of the installation procedure. Put the hub on. Put the square key into the notch on the axle. Rotate the hub to line the keyway up. Then push the hub all the way on. Make sure the keyway is engaged and the axle rotates with the hub. Repeat the process for the other side. You may need to hammer the keyway into the notch. If the hub won't go all the way on, an alternative way to do it is to put the hub on first, then put the keyway in the notch, line it up with the hub, and hammer the keyway and hub into place. Test the axle by driving it in both forward and reverse. Make sure your sprockets are still lined up and that it's operating smoothly with no chain noise. Make any adjustments as needed, but do not proceed until everything is dialed in. Tighten all the set screws on the bearings with a 1/8 Allen wrench. Each bearing has 2 set screws. Make sure the hub is all the way up against the pillow block bearing and then install your locking collar on the outside of the hub. Tighten the set screw on the collar using a 5/32 Allen wrench. Now we're going to trim the excess axle. Once you do this, there's no going back. So you have to be sure that both your hub and your collar are installed on both sides and that the axle, sprockets, and chain are all finely tuned exactly how they need to be. I'm using a grinder with a cutoff wheel to do this. If you use this setup, you must use a full face shield and you must be aware of which way the cutting wheel is going to pull so that the grinder doesn't get in a bind. A safer way to do this is with a hacksaw, but it will take longer. A sawzall with a metal blade or portable bandsaw would be another option. After it's cut, I'm going to use a grinder wheel to clean up the surface and make sure there's no sharp edges. Repeat the process for the other side. Now we're going to reinstall the wheels and the lug nuts. Make sure to put the tapered side of the lug nut facing the wheel and wiggle the wheel around while hand tightening to make sure the holes are centered on the studs. Tighten them down in a cross pattern. Do one last check to make sure the dolly drives smoothly in both forward and reverse. Double check that everything is tight, the sprockets are still aligned, and that all tools and debris are removed. Now we're going to reinstall the rear cover plate. These holes are easily stripped out, especially on older dollies. I recommend you buy some larger self-tapping screws, number 12 or even number 14, 1 inch long. Those can be tightened in holes that are stripped out. Be careful not to over-tighten them and strip them out again. Another option is to drill a new hole adjacent to the existing hole. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, message us on Facebook. Thanks, and have a jolly day.